At the Orange County Community Foundation, we believe in transforming our community's heartfelt intention into greater impact for good. By helping donors find the causes they love, we strengthen our community. We lead the way with bold solutions, combining giving strategy and community intelligence. Leveraging our generous donors and passionate partners, we amplify the power of giving. Together, we are helping to build an Orange County where all have the opportunity to thrive. OCCF is a proud underwriter of community programming and OC World. OC World is made possible by the generous contributions of the Marisla Foundation, the Keith and Judy Swain Family Foundation, Orange County Community Foundation, the University of California, Irvine, Socorro and Ernesto Vasquez Family Foundation, Crevier Family Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to OC World. I'm Christina Dodge, and today we're joined by a true pioneer in the field of psychology, Dr. Elizabeth Loftus. As a distinguished professor at University of California, Irvine, with appointments in psychology, criminology, and law, Dr. Loftus has fundamentally changed how we understand human memory. Her groundbreaking research has revealed that our memories are not perfect recordings, but are surprisingly malleable and susceptible to suggestion. This work has transformed everything from courtroom procedures to police interviews and has helped free innocent people wrongly convicted based on mistaken eyewitness testimony. Dr. Loftus, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for that intro.
So you have spent a lifetime studying memories. Now, most of us think our memories are impeccable. We can recall things from 20 years ago and in vivid detail, and we think that we are just 100% correct about our memories. But you say that's not always the case. As a matter of fact, you have proven that memories are malleable, they're fallible, and they're even manipulable to the extent that someone can take a completely fabricated story, implant it in the brain verbally, and people will believe it's completely true and that it happened to them. How so? Tell us about this, and what was the biggest surprise to you in your years of research on this subject?
Well, you just summarized maybe like a half a century of research in that in that paragraph. And so well, let me just say that I started studying memory a long time ago. And in fact, the kind of memory that I was interested in is what happens when people see crimes or accidents or other legally relevant events. And then they're questioned about the experience. Maybe they're questioned in a biased way. How does that affect what they say, what they report, and what they remember? And so some of the early studies, for example, we did a study where we asked people who had seen a simulated accident, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other, or other witnesses were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, and we got different estimates of speed. But then we went further. We could bring people back later and say, we want to ask you some more questions. Did you see any broken glass? And if we had used the word smashed with them, they now were more likely to tell us, yeah, I did see broken glass, but there was no broken glass in that accident scene. And that was my first clue that what those leading questions were doing is not just changing what people say, but modifying their memory. And I mean, that was, one of the more interesting moments in my scientific career.
It's interesting that you studied that. And what do we do? What do we do about that? Because that is part of our daily conversation.
Well, you're absolutely right. These kinds of issues come up in daily life. Um, Often in daily life, it doesn't matter. We probably make lots of mistakes, and we probably get influenced a lot, but it doesn't always matter. I mean, if I tell you I had a chicken for dinner last night instead of a hamburger, um, I make a mistake. You don't know. I don't get caught in my mistake, and it doesn't really matter very much. But when somebody's liberty or property or life is at stake in a legal case, then small differences and the malleable memory can make a big difference.
Yep, you're right. And so that leads me to my next question. So you have pretty much created the trajectory for expert witness testimony and the way the justice system handles eyewitness accounts. And so that's where this concept really comes into play. You've literally changed the course of the justice system because of this information. So tell us about that.
Well, I didn't do it alone. I mean, I am one scientist in there, and I have been at it for quite a long time. But there are many other scientists who do the work that is similar. I belong to a scientific community, but collectively, I think we have made a difference. We have created scientific findings that affect policy. So, for example, we have created scientific findings that change the way police do their investigations. I mean, for example, when a police officer conducts a lineup, brings a witness to a crime to the police station to look at a lineup, how do you present that lineup? What do you say to the witness? There are all kinds of issues that have to be resolved about the best way to do it. And one of the things that this body of work has suggested is it's really a good practice to have somebody conducting the lineup who does not know who the suspect is.
That was a brilliant conclusion.
That's one of the sort of number one recommendations. It's called a blind test,
Right.
where the person who's conducting the test does not know who the suspect is. Why is that important? It's important because then the officer cannot cue the person, even inadvertently, and the officer also cannot give feedback when the witness says, how'd I do? Did I get the right person or whatever? They don't know, and they can't give feedback that can artificially contaminate the witness.
Right, even when they don't mean to do it. I mean, this is the human bias. Everybody has it, right? The investigators, the police officers, the judges. So I'm so happy to hear that you took that concept and obviously extrapolated out to solutions to try to make it better. What other methods, were you instrumental in implementing?
Well, first of all, the importance of separating witnesses. When you're interviewing one witness, you don't let another witness hear the answers of the first one. And in some of the trainings that I've done for the Secret Service or law enforcement, I'll talk about how basically not to accidentally, inadvertently contaminate somebody.
When you decided to challenge the repressed memory movement, did you have any idea what kind of backlash would ensue?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Well, first of all, how I got into the whole repressed memory issue was kind of accidental. I got a call from an attorney. He said, I'm representing a man who's accused of murder, and I've been a public defender, which to me meant he had a lot of trial experience. I've worked on a lot of murder cases in his private practice. I've never had a case like this. His client was accused of a murder that had happened 20 years earlier, based only on the claim of the defendant's daughter, who said that she saw her father kill her little best friend, rape and kill her, and that she repressed her memory, and now the memory came back. And the lawyer wanted to know, what do you know about this idea of repression? That the daughter was claiming she repressed all this and repressed lots and lots of other horrific things that had happened. And when I started to look into the literature, and I soon would realize there wasn't any really credible scientific support for the idea that memory works like this. That you can banish years of brutalization into the unconscious and reliably recover it all later.
But but psychology is not an exact science either. It's not black and white, right? It's not like chemistry or physics used to be. So it's difficult to prove or disprove, right? So, but I guess what gives you the proof often are the statistics, the number of times that something occurred, or what is it? So where did you take that research then?
Well, I looked to see what evidence, what scientific evidence people were using to support their belief in massive repression, and it didn't support it at all. It was very flimsy evidence, and yet we were seeing people be convicted of crimes based on this flimsy theory, or being deprived of their property in a civil case based on this flimsy theory. And a lot of the way these repressed memories were being advanced was through some questionable psychotherapy practices. So that's how I got into this whole, what we call the memory wars. And it made some people angry. It made people who thought they had repressed memories, the patients themselves, angry. It made the therapists who had helped them recover what they thought were repressed memories.
And we're getting a livelihood from this new discovery.
Right, they were making a living that way, but they really believed in their theory. And then the lawyers who would handle the cases when these patients started to sue their parents and their other relatives and their former neighbors and everybody.
Anybody you might have been angry about. That's the reason I'm angry.
Yeah, and so that's and I interacted with a lot of people who I felt were falsely accused. So that's how I got into that whole issue and got pretty passionate about it and got a lot of backlash.
Yeah, you did. How did you deal with all of that? I mean, did you at one point, did you say, why did I get drug into this? It's just too much. Did you ever go through that? Because I know there was a lot of vitriol. There was just so much coming at you.
Well, there was. I mean, I had people, threaten organizations that had invited me to speak with a lawsuit or try to get them to rescind the invitation. I had people writing letters to try to get me fired from my university positions. I had, and then the worst was when a woman who accused her mother of sexual abuse, and I had kind of questioned the authenticity of the accusation. She sued me and my co-author and the magazine where we published the results of an investigation. So there's people can get pretty angry and create a lot of problems if you express some skepticism that makes them angry.
Yes, they sure can.
But how did I deal with it? I have a few ways, but one is there's a large collection of people who are incredibly grateful, and so sometimes they'll send a letter, thank you for saving my life, or it's an email. And I have these files, I call them when blue files, when I'm feeling blue, when blue. So I have an electronic one, and I have a snail mail one, and I can go consult those letters if I'm feeling like overwhelmed with an attack.
Yes, you have a way of dealing with it. Well, if you're feeling blue, I have a great quote from someone who's definitely in your corner. And this person said about you, it's axiomatic that no person, no matter how positive and charming she is, can make serious contributions to controversial arenas without acquiring enemies along the way. And I thought that was very well said. You mentioned high-profile cases. I feel like your name's associated with every high-profile case that I know of and I've heard of. I mean, so many of them. You've had some impact or something to do with them, whether it's the O.J. Simpson, Rodney King. Harvey Weinstein, I know that was probably very controversial. So what were some of the tough ones that you were an expert witness to or had some collaboration with? And it didn't mean that you were supporting them. You were supporting your research is what you were doing, but it's not always looked upon that way.
I've met a lot of unpopular people along the way. And if I do testify in a criminal case, the prosecutors like to bring up, didn't you testify for Ted Bundy? Or didn't you consult for, O.J. Simpson or the Oklahoma bomber? Or now more recently, some of these people accused of sexual abuse, Harvey Weinstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Kevin Spacey. Well, first of all, in the first part of my career, I was dealing mostly with a lot of robberies and murders, and the crime really happened. The crime really happened, but the question is who committed it.
Right.
In some of those cases, I do believe that the person might have been guilty of some things, but not everything that they were charged with, or sometimes they were overcharged. In the Ted Bundy case, of course, that was way back in the 70s. I went to Utah to testify in a trial where a first-year law student was accused 9 months or a year earlier of an aggravated kidnapping. We didn't even know who Ted Bundy was.
Right.
But there were questions about the way in which the identification was done and the accuracy of that identification. He was convicted anyhow, and he went on to do other things and horrible things, and he was eventually executed. Charming man in the courtroom.
I bet. Yes.
Very charming.
Yes.
That's probably why all those women would,
right.
Get in a car with him or
yes.
whatever. But and prosecutors used to like to bring that up, even though, who knew back then.
Right.
Sort of more recently, well, every now and then somebody comes along who maybe you think might have done some things, but again, didn't necessarily do everything that he's accused of. And I often will go and just testify about the science. I mean, in the Harvey Weinstein case, I talked just about basic science. In fact, the judge ruled that I couldn't mention any specific people or any specific suggestive things that I thought may have happened in the interviewing of people in that case, just basic science. And yet still, it made a lot of people angry. And I particularly if it's like a law professor who's getting angry, I say, hey, wait a minute, don't we all have a right to a defense, a meaningful defense? And aren't we innocent till proven guilty? And
correct.
And why are you yelling at me at the sandwich table before a faculty meeting because I happen to go testify for an unpopular person? What's wrong with you? I mean,
yes, yeah, you had to have really thick skin and a great, incredible belief in what you were doing.
Yeah, well, actually in the Weinstein case, I signed on to work on the case before we actually knew that much about him because I had worked with one of the attorneys before, and she was a fabulous attorney, and I looked forward to working with her again.
Yes.
By the time the New York cases arose, I was going to have to back out. And even though I was feeling, I'm not so sure about this, I was going to have to back out. And
you mean from a personal value standpoint?
Well, I was going to have to say, thanks. I think I'd rather not.
Yes.
So first I recommended another expert for him, very good expert who they hired, and I thought, okay, I'm off the hook. But then he persisted, and he wanted my testimony on memory, and I thought if I back out, it's because I've been seduced by the media coverage, which I've been telling people for decades. Don't let it seduce you. They only tell you part of the story, not all the story. And I would have been backing out because I was afraid it would hurt my ability to help other people in the future and might hurt me. And I didn't want to feel like a coward. So I said, okay, I'm going to bring in the memory science.
Wow, you do the hard stuff. Yes, you make the tough decisions. So we're in an era of algorithm curation where our personalized information is detailed and sent to us digitally for us. And it's actually very insular and myopic, and I might say unverified. And then you throw in artificial intelligence into it too, and it becomes more complicated. You don't know what is real, what's not real. Do you think that we can draw parallels between this information coming at us daily into our inboxes and false memories being implanted? Any kind of memories, but false memories too.
Absolutely. So first of all, I've had a chance to collaborate with the MIT media group, a group of brilliant people at MIT who work on artificial intelligence and other, very high-tech things. And one of the collaborative projects that we just completed is one in which we expose people to altered images altered by artificial intelligence. And when you expose people to an altered image of something they've experienced in the past, it affects their memory. So that's the finding. It affects their memory. So imagine what people can do to us. They can take our images, that we're posting on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. They can take our images, alter them, share them with other people or back to us, and it's very likely to affect the way we remember things.
Because why? Because we're doubting ourselves, because we see that visual in black and white and color, whatever, and so we say that must have happened. I'm like that. That's like fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you have a picture of someone, and maybe they're smiling, and the AI alteration makes them look a little tense and unhappy, and now they start remembering maybe they didn't enjoy that experience quite as much as they thought. I mean, it creates a new image, and that new image becomes their memory.
Well, that's a little bit scary.
It's very scary.
I mean, this is like going to mess with our belief systems too.
Completely. So, yeah, you put somebody into one of their information bubbles where they're going to get reinforced for certain ideas, and there's going to be a lot of repetition of false information. And those are the ingredients that enhance the likelihood that these will be lasting pieces of misinformation and fiction that are part of our beliefs and memories. Right now, we're just trying to study the process by which this happens. Eventually, this is going to lead to some strategizing for, minimizing this or defending against it, building a better shield against the sword. Then they're going to make a better sword. We're going to need an even better shield. So science marches on.
Right. So can't we take these lemons and turn them into lemonade? Because it's like, instead of looking at the downside of this, can't we say, okay, how can we use that to a good end? What can we do? Why can't we indoctrinate our kids and whatever else we want with all these things in a positive way to have a positive outcome?
Well, as a matter of fact, that some of the work that I did when I first got to UC Irvine, as a matter of fact, was on the repercussions of having a false memory. So we planted false memories that you got sick eating a particular food, like a fattening food, and then people didn't want to eat the food as much. And we planted.
Can you do that with me with sugar?
Well, I know a lot of people wrote and wanted me to do it with them after the work got publicized. And we can make you want to eat more of a healthy food, want to drink, fewer vodka drinks, and so when the New York Times ran a story about this, they called it the false memory diet, because it did lead to changes in behavior. And at some point, when I gave a TED talk and I talked a little bit about this work, I said, therapists may not be allowed deliberately to deceive you. They may have some ethical rules, but there's nothing to stop a parent from maybe trying out some of these things with their overweight or obese teenager, and seeing if they could get them to dislike, some fattening foods and eat less of it. Well, again, people, a little backlash. Oh, there she goes again, suggesting parents lie to their kids.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
And my response to
You
that
can't
was,
win.
"Hello, Santa Claus." I mean, yeah, people will lie to kids when they feel like it for some other reason. Would you rather have a
Right.
kid with obesity and diabetes and shortened lifespan and heart trouble, or a kid with a little bit of fiction floating around in memory?
Right. Common
It's
sense,
a
a little common
choice.
sense.
It's
a
a
choice.
choice.
Yes, a little common sense there. Wow. So what is left for you? You've made some incredible discoveries through your research. What's next for you? What's on your plate?
Well, right now I run a lab at UC Irvine, and I've got graduate students, and we're working on some interesting projects that I think relate to things that are happening in the real world. So, for example, we have one project where, because I've seen this happen, the media publicizes a story about a person and says they're a bad person, they're hostile, they're aggressive, they're sexually inappropriate. And then other people come forward and say, yeah, I think I had an experience like that with that person. So we're now devising studies to examine that phenomenon and finding that if you see somebody do something that's sort of innocently interacting with a little animal, and 3 other people say it was very aggressive, you'll start to say, well, yeah, I think it was aggressive. So that you can influence people's kind of emotional reactions to and distort in a way that's a little different than what we've done in the past. So that's just one example of an extension of this work today.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. It's a great extension of your work. I'm afraid we're running out of time. This has been so fascinating, Dr. Loftus. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. Your work has transformed not only how we understand memory, but also insight into how our justice system operates. Thank you for watching OC World. I'm Christina Dodge.